Mr. President, I rise today to speak about the Senate's need to swiftly confirm pending U.S. Attorney nominees. 2 days ago, I came to the floor to request unanimous consent for the Senate to take up and confirm 4 pending U.S. Attorney nominations that were being held up by one United States Senator, the junior senator from Ohio, Senator Vance. And 2 days ago, he said, and I quote, "My position is we should have a full Senate vote on each of these Justice Department nominations." He also said, quote, "If it's so important to confirm these folks, bring them to a floor for a vote." But now that's exactly what he is attempting to prevent today. For decades, the Senate confirmed U.S. Attorney nominees of both political parties by voice vote, or what is called unanimous consent in the Senate, after they had been reported by the Judiciary Committee. Before the beginning of the Biden administration, the Senate had not required a roll call vote in confirmation of a U.S. attorney since 1975, almost 50 years. In fact, during the Trump administration, Senate Democrats allowed every one of Trump's U.S. attorney nominees, all 85, to move through the committee and be confirmed by a voice vote, unanimous consent. Let me tell you, as a Democrat in those days, I knew what I was getting with these U.S. attorneys. Working for Jeff Sessions, Attorney General Jeff Sessions, and William Barr, I knew what was going to happen. But I respected the tradition of the Senate. Now Senate Republicans have decided to change the rules and are blocking the confirmation of these critical law enforcement officers. I've faced this before. Republicans have said they're going to object to U.S. attorneys, but fortunately had better thoughts on the subject as time progressed. Now this year, the senator from Ohio has proudly announced that he will, I want to quote him exactly here, "I will hold all DOJ nominations. We will grind the Justice Department to a halt." Grind the Justice Department to a halt. U.S. attorneys are too important to be used as political pawns in a national debate. They lead our nation's effort to prosecute violent criminals. Don't tell me that you're for law and order, but you want to stop criminal prosecutors from being appointed to the job. They lead our nation's effort to protect our communities from drug trafficking. I quoted some numbers the other day about drug trafficking and fentanyl deaths in the state of Ohio, the state where one of these U.S. attorneys would be going to work in the Cleveland area. Ohio ranks 4th in the nation in narcotics deaths. And for the Senate to respond by one senator from Ohio stopping the appointment of a criminal prosecutor to go after these cartels and drug gangs is not explainable. So I offered Senator Vance the opportunity to allow us to schedule confirmation votes on all pending U.S. attorneys. I want to read exactly what he said from the congressional record, which of course is the permanent record of the Senate and will be read by future generations. This is on September 27th, 2 days ago. Here is what Senator Vance said. "I'm the new guy, and I recognize I'm a little naive when it comes to matters of the procedures of the United States Senate. But I've had a lot of jobs in my life, and yesterday we passed 1 vote, and today we have passed 0 votes. The time that we have spent debating whether we should have unanimous consent over these nominations, we could actually use to vote on these nominations and end this charade and call it for what it is. If we believe that these nominees must go forward, let's just have a vote on it. Allow me to scrutinize them. Allow my colleagues to vote them up or down. That is totally a reasonable thing to do, to ask of this chamber and to ask of this leadership, and because of that, I object." Well, I accepted his challenge. I took his words to be heartfelt and truthful, that he wanted votes. And so today we had 2 votes on 2 of the U.S. attorneys, considered by the Senate, exactly what the senator from Ohio asked for. But there are 2 more on the calendar that he held up initially. He said on the floor during our debate, these weren't people he was necessarily objecting to, but somebody else in the Senate might be objecting to them. I didn't know what that meant, but I wanted to give him the time to find out who that might be. It turns out there is no one else. He's the only objector, even though he said on the record, in the congressional record, that all he wanted was a roll call vote on these nominees. Well, he's going to get a chance to keep his word that he put in the congressional record, and he's going to get a chance to have the vote that he asked for. Only fair. We did it for the first two, we'll do it for the others. Let me repeat again, Senator Vance has not only refused to move these nominees by voice vote, as the Senate has done for decades, he is now backtracking on his own words from 2 days ago and refusing even to allow roll calls on these nominees. This kind of obstructionism is becoming commonplace, I'm afraid. If you take a look at this executive calendar that we have here, there are pages and pages of military officers who have served this country nobly and honorably, who are asking for a simple promotion they're entitled to. They're being held up by another Republican senator who doesn't want to move forward on this, holding them for 6 months from promotion. Is this the new way of doing business under the MAGA regime? I hope not. Rebecca Lutzko was nominated to be U.S. Attorney for the Northern District of Ohio. She's a longtime federal prosecutor who has served as Assistant U.S. Attorney in the U.S. Attorney's Office for the Northern District of Ohio for nearly 18 years. As a federal prosecutor, she handles cases involving prescription drug trafficking, gun crimes, and corruption. Important? You bet it is. April Perry, nominated to be U.S. Attorney for the Northern District of Illinois, significant experience in the private sector and as a federal prosecutor. She served the U.S. Attorney's Office for the Northern District of Illinois for over a decade, where she handled narcotics, gang violence, public corruption, and fraud. Important? You bet it is. Ms. Perry specialized in child exploitation prosecutions, spent 6 years as the office's Project Safe Childhood Coordinator. Are you concerned, as I am, about the exploitation of children, the trafficking of children, the terrible sexual abuse that's taking place on the internet? Do you think we ought to have the Department of Justice on that case? Of course we should. 1 week ago, Senator Vance was quoted as saying, "My objection is not to the specific qualifications of these particular individuals that have been nominated." So here he is, not complaining about any of their resumes or capacity to do the job and do it effectively. His concern, and he said it publicly, so I think I'm going to accurately quote him, his concern that his former president of the United States was indicted. And he's very concerned about a Department of Justice that would even let that happen. For goodness sakes, things happen during the Department of Justice activity under the administration of Donald Trump that I objected to. But I didn't stop the appointment of U.S. attorneys under Trump. I didn't stop the people in law enforcement who were keeping us safe in our communities. These are eminently qualified individuals. And clearly, I'm asking Senator Vance, in good faith, keep your word. What you said in the congressional record is a matter of record, and you should stand by your word. And for that reason, I make the following motion. I ask unanimous consent that the Senate proceed to executive session to consider the following nominations on block, calendar 314 and 315, that the Senate vote on the nominations on block without intervening action or debate, that if confirmed, the motions to reconsider be considered made and laid upon the table, and the President be immediately notified of the Senate's action, and the Senate resume legislative session.
Is there objection?
Madam President.
Senator from Ohio.
Madam President, reserving the right to object, let me address a few of my distinguished colleague from Illinois' comments. First of all, while it is true that my hold policy regarding the Department of Justice is not focused on any particular nominee, I do think this particular nominee is particularly troublesome, and let me just talk about why. Ms. Perry is a figure who served as Chief Ethics Officer in the Cook County State Attorney's Office during the Jussie Smollett hate crime hoax. We may remember that from a few years ago. This is when a person accused people of engaging in a false hate crime, took a ton of state resources to investigate it, and it turned out the entire thing was fraudulent, meant to gin up publicity for Mr. Smollett. Now, everyone pretty much agrees that Ms. Fox, who was the state attorney at the time, engaged in some pretty unethical behavior, and Mrs. Perry effectively rubber-stamped it. Is this the sort of person who could be trusted to impartially administer justice in the Biden-Garland Department of Justice? I don't think that she is. So I'll be voting against her nomination, and I also object to giving a streamlined confirmation process for her. Now, the senator from Illinois is apparently hell-bent on coming before the chamber every single week to litigate what I think and believe is a corrupt and politicized Department of Justice. He makes much, and he makes much every single time we engage in this exercise, about the fact that the Department of Justice has never had this kind of hold policy placed on it before. I agree, this is a new and unique circumstance. What is much different about the Trump administration Department of Justice and the Merrick Garland, Joe Biden Department of Justice is Donald Trump never tried to throw his political opponents in prison. This is crazy banana republic stuff, and I will not stand for it. I will continue to hold these nominations. I will continue to push back against the politicization of justice. And finally, let me just say, what I have asked for and what I will continue to ask for is that these nominees go through regular order. The senator knows well what everybody else knows, that as one senator, I cannot prevent the confirmation of these nominees, however much I might like to. What I can do is force us to go through regular order. I ask for a vote, Senator Durbin. You can invoke cloture. We can vote on cloture. We can then do a recorded vote. That is what we have done with many, many nominees, and because of the corruption of Merrick Garland's Department of Justice, it's what I ask with this nominee and with any in the future. Because of that, Madam President, I object.
Objection is heard.
Madam President, it is interesting now we've got a new argument. Previously, he said, I have no objection to these nominees. I just don't like the process. I want to vote. I said, fine, you can have a vote. Now when we ask for a vote on the two remaining nominees for U.S. Attorney, he's finding fault with them as individuals. I hope he'll take the time, and I know he's a fair person, to read the record about what Ms. Perry did when she worked for State's Attorney Kim Foxx. It is true there was a controversial case before her office, and that she was the chief ethics officer in the Cook County State's Attorney's Office. She served in that office at the time the Jussie Smollett matter was being investigated. But Ms. Perry's role as chief ethics officer was limited to recommending that the state's attorney Foxx recuse herself and the office seek appointment of a special prosecutor. Notably, Ms. Perry resigned from that office a few weeks after the prosecutors initially agreed to drop the charges against Mr. Smollett. She has never been implicated, and to throw her name into this situation is unfair. I'm sure the senator from Ohio does not want to do that. So listen to what he suggests. I'm glad that Senator Reed's on the floor, chairman of the Armed Services Committee. Sound familiar? Here we have a group of people, nominees that have come before us, have been considered throughout history in a routine, unanimous consent way. And now the senator from Ohio says we're going to go one by one and have a cloture motion on each one of them. You and I both know, having been here a few years, what that means. It's physically impossible, whether we're talking about officers in the military or U.S. attorney nominees, to say we'll just stack them up on the calendar and go through cloture votes. And it's unnecessary. If we didn't single out a single U.S. attorney nominee in the Trump administration, but gave voice votes to all 85, it's an indication of an effort at goodwill and bipartisanship, even when we're suspicious of what the political agenda may be of that department. To hold some of these people, the U.S. attorney for his own home state, the city of Cleveland, to hold this person to this kind of scrutiny that goes way beyond anything that we usually have been involved in is unfair to her, and it's unfair to the process and the system. I am going to return to the floor. The senator from Ohio and I are going to be pretty familiar fixtures on this floor, because if he says something in the congressional record as he did, all we want's a roll call, and we offer a roll call just as I did, and he denies it over and over, he has some explaining to do. And if he thinks that standing up for the MAGA order of process here is something the American people admire, I beg you to differ with him. We understand that the Department of Justice has an important job to do to keep us safe in our communities. And for someone to say, the senator from the United States Senate to say, I will hold all DOJ nominations. We will grind the Justice Department to a halt. Really? That's your agenda? And that's why you came to the Senate? If the Department of Defense is being ground to a halt because of the promotion of officers, and to do the same thing in the Department of Justice, and we're facing a government shutdown over MAGA members of the House of Representatives, the American people have a good picture, a good photograph of the future if we go now.